in terms of my immediate family, I am from London, and I grew up in the late 80s. My family in particular were not very well off and had to sleep with me, my two older brothers, and mom and dad in a one-bedroom flat. I would have been only a couple of years old, but we eventually moved out, but not before some crazy things happened. The first thing that went all crazy was my eldest brother, who would have been 6 or 7 at the time. He walked into the kitchen on one restless night to get a drink in the early hours, and he seems to recall it being 1 or 2 a.m. And to his shock and horror, an old man was standing by the sink, and this man turned around to look at him. He was tall and skinny, and he seemed to wear a white vest, but the bottom half, he recalled, looked foggy or murky. He distinctly recalls the old guy staring at him and asking him, quote, "Where are the baked beans?" unquote. My brother turned around and he ran to the room where my mom and dad were, like any kid naturally would, screaming and shouting. My mother has insisted that this was very unlike him and had never had anything happen like this before or since. My brother, still to this day, some 35 years or so later, remembers his face and is adamant that he was standing in front of him. It is a joke now, seeing where the baked beans are. Just imagine that being your only proof of the paranormal. Not too long after that, we had a nice big house ready for us. My mom took charge of the moving day as my dad was working away that week, but she had her family to help with the move also. As she didn't drive, she went ahead to the new place, and her brother, one of my uncles, stayed back to close the doors and make sure that everything was off when the removal guys were done. After a little while, my uncle appeared back at the new house, seemingly all being well. But he had a look on his face. My mom said that she could tell something was wrong. And this particular brother is the old school, no-nonsense kind of guy. Games and lies just were not things that he was into. So she casually says to him that she may actually have to go back to the old flat, as she thinks she may have left a few things in a cupboard. And my uncle snapped at her, saying, "No, leave it. Just leave it." And my mom said again, "Well, I'll only be a few minutes." But he again cut her off and said sternly, "No, leave it, and I will go and get it another time." She hadn't seen him that animated in a long time. And he went further and said, quote, "Promise me you won't go back there," unquote. That's all that was said on the matter, as my herself. She went in, and the way that she describes the atmosphere of the house was very dark, very hostile, and it had this uneasy feeling where she knew that she was not alone. And there was also a heaviness that was in there, almost like a weighted blanket was on top of her. Suffice to say, she did not get the bits that she needed, and she got out of there ASAP. Everything was telling her that there was a negative force or a negative presence that would have been a danger to her had she stayed. I don't believe my mom and her brothers have ever spoken about what he initially saw or what he experienced. Maybe we will never know, but whatever it was not something that my mother said she had ever felt before. The other story is from my family. Also from my family is of a different uncle this time, but again on my mother's side of our family. This uncle was staying the night in a hotel out in the country in Kent. It was in the mid-90s. It's a beautiful area and has lots and lots of mansions and huge hotels. He was with his then wife and had a fairly uneventful evening, and they were sleeping well until they both woke up in the night. They must have heard noises in the room, as they both seemed to jolt up out of bed almost in unison. And to their horror and surprise, there was a little blonde girl standing at the foot of their bed. She was around 10 years old, and she was wearing a white Victorian-style bushy night dress. My uncle, in shock, told her to get out of their room, thinking that a kid had somehow snuck their way in. The little girl turned around. She opened the door and she walked out. And he resisted the urge to complain to reception, but upon checking out of the hotel the next morning, he mentions it. The concierge laughed and said, "We have no children staying here. This is an adult-only hotel. But it seems like you have met our resident ghostly girl, Agatha." They casually chatted about it, and he explained that she has been known to walk into people's rooms. She is usually friendly and laughs. She is often seen walking down the hotel corridors, etc. But both my uncle and his wife saw this, and they have no explanation other than to take what the concierge said as fact. The door was bolted shut from the inside with 2 door locks, so the fact that she was in the room, it's all very unexplainable. Thank you for reading my stories from Anthony. Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate you sending your stories. Those are cool. Except for the very dark feeling that was in your house. But if ghosts are walking around just looking for baked beans, then cheers to them. Means baked beans are good here and in the afterlife. Okay. Years ago, while I was working late at a small town radio station, I stumbled upon an eerie coincidence. I decided to air an oldie song that I had been humming to myself all day, and it was not one of our usual tracks. And shortly after the song started playing, an old man called into the station. His voice was quivering with emotion, and it turned out that he was the original artist of that song, which was a one-hit wonder from decades back. He told me that he had not heard his song on the radio in over 30 years, and he just so happened to tune in that night while driving through our town. That particular song was his late wife's favorite, and it was also her birthday that day. The odds of all of that happening were so astronomical that it sent shivers down both of our spines. It's moments like that, when the universe aligns in the most hauntingly beautiful way, that remind me just how mysterious life can be. I love that. That's cool. Okay, I was about 17 when this happened, so this is over 20 years ago. I wake up in my room and I start getting ready for school, and I hear my mom yelling for me to hurry up. And she sounded unusually angry. I start going down the hall towards her voice as she's still rambling in anger, and I can hear her doing the laundry as I get closer and closer. I turn the corner to the laundry room, and my mom is disheveled looking. She's still wearing her nightgown and her robe, and she's running the dryer and loading the washer in this frantic manner. It spooked me because this was just very out of character for her. In the mornings, she was always showered and dressed and heading out to work. And she dressed up nice clothes and nice heels, and always had makeup and jewelry on, the works. But here she is, mad, sloppy, groggy, and she is throwing clothes around while yelling at me to get going and just complaining about my behavior. It's not that my mom didn't yell at me. Like, I was far from a golden child, but it was the way that she was acting. It was just so off, and I felt really uncomfortable. I retreated down the hall and I headed down the stairs to the first level, and I could still hear the laundry, and I could hear my mom saying stuff behind me. But as I got to the bottom of the stairs, around the corner, out of my view in the kitchen, I hear my mom start talking to me in her normal, cheery voice. Also, I did see her face in the laundry room, but she was not making eye contact with me. She was just standing at a profile, focusing on the laundry that she was tossing around. Did anyone else just think Coraline and your other mother? Coraline is such a good movie, but thinking about that in some like parallel world being real, it's so creepy. Your other mother. Oh. That's a creepy one. Okay. I was working at a hospital and it was nighttime. The elevators run along a glass corner, and if it's night and you're on the last elevator, you can see the reflection of the hall. Say if someone is waiting. I was on that last elevator. I got to the main floor, and then the doors opened up, where I see a blonde lady in all black with a small sports-style stroller who is waiting for the elevator, and I can see it in that glass reflection. Now, I fully intended to hold the door for her, so I double-checked the glass to see if she would start walking so I could hold the door open from closing. I checked even a third time at the glass, still standing there. I breached out of the elevator and I started to hold my arm out to hold that door since she wasn't moving. And then no one was there. I looked back at the reflection and I see nothing. I went to the tea in the hall. Still no one. I was sort of panicked and immediately I called a coworker in case of the worst to tell him what I witnessed. So I am a major skeptic, but this crazy thing did happen to me. My significant other and I were looking for haunted hiking trails to explore with a friend of ours. I forgot which trail we settled on, but we settled on a supposedly haunted forest in Massachusetts. That night before the hike, I had an incredibly vivid dream that the three of us were in a strange outdoor pool in the woods. It was a very bizarre place. It was this bottomless pit of water, probably 8 feet in diameter. It was essentially a pool of water with regular stones surrounding it in a meticulous manner, but for no apparent reason. The fact that it was bottomless sincerely bothered me, but everyone was complaining that I was just being paranoid and that I actually needed to wade further into the pool. Over time, they got kind of weird about it, to the point where I began to panic that something was seriously wrong. And it escalated to the point where they attempted to drag me under with a terrible, irresistible force, and then I woke up in a complete sweat. Of course, I woke up and I immediately told my significant other about the dream. I don't think I've ever woken up in a sweat like that in my entire life, but the dream was just entered via dark leaves that lined the bottom, making it look bottomless. I know it's a minor thing to have happened, but I really cannot explain how that pool was in my dream or why I felt such a super bad feeling about it. I work security. A lot of times controlling gate access, and a lot of the time I do this at night. Now, for those of you not in the know, generally, if you're doing gate access, you're in a small concrete shack with windows everywhere so you can see what is going on around you. One night, I am at a warehouse which is out in the boonies. All the warehouse workers were gone for the night, and I am the only person around for miles. I'm kicking back, chilling, and just watching movies. I glance up, and in the reflection on the glass, I see somebody walking by behind my shack. I spin around and I look outside, but I do not see anyone. I look out all of the windows. I get up and I go outside and I look around. I even pull up the security footage, but I see nothing. No one is around. I talked to the other guards who had worked that same night shift at that site, and everyone had experienced the same thing at one point or another. I kept working that site for 2 years, doing a lot of night shifts, and that phantom would show up in reflections every now and then, always at night. It led to our unofficial night shift motto, which is, if you see something strange, no you didn't. Alright, I have a similar story, and it happened when I was filling in on a site in the middle of nowhere. It was a guard shack with little to no lighting in the surrounding area. Late night, I am training with the full-time guard, and I see what appears to be a guy walking our way. I point him out and I commented on how odd it is, especially since there are no other vehicles around besides mine and the other guards. The other guard tells me that that is just Larry making his rounds. Apparently, it was common knowledge for the full-timers on that site that there is something wandering around the site at night, and they believe that it is one of the former guards who died on site, and he is still showing up and doing his original rounds. I saw someone peek into my room one night while I was playing video games. I had my headphones in and the lights were off, but I did indeed somebody peek in out of my periphery. I figured that it was my mom checking checking on me after getting home, as she always did. But I was concentrating and I didn't really pay too much mind. I might have called out, "Love you, good night," something like that. I don't remember. But I went downstairs about 10 minutes later for water, and nobody was home. I don't like that one. I had a dream that I was in an Irish airport with two women. Neither I had ever seen before, but both were distinct in their very own way. One of the women was very bird-like, with shock blonde hair, and the other woman was heavy-set and wore a head bandana. I remember wondering why I had dreamed about it. In any case, I wrote it down in my dream journal. We ate at an Italian restaurant that had a neon sign with spaghetti and meatballs. And fast forward 5 years to me being out of school, and I get sent on an emergency trip to go and fix an issue at a site in Ireland. Network was broken, each box was not booting, and it was actually fun. They've sent along a couple of the women who write some of the ERP software and needed to work with some of the staff to iron out the kinks. And I'm not joking, it was those women. The bandana was because she'd just completed chemo for breast cancer, and the other woman had the shock blonde hair and was 50 pounds soaking wet. I'm not joking, we ate at that damn restaurant. The Italian one with the neon sign. I sat there aghast eating my chicken parm. Nothing like it has ever happened since. Interjecting shirt and jeans. I couldn't see his face because he was facing the other bedroom. There was nothing below his knees. I could see the top of his head down to his knees. I assumed that I was just dreaming, so I closed my eyes hard and I opened them, trying to wake myself up, but he was still standing there. Then I rubbed my eyes again with my hands, but he was still there. Finally, as I was staring at him, he simply vanished. And the entire time, I wasn't afraid of him. I woke up my cousin that I was sharing the room with, and we got up for the day. I can't explain what I saw, but I know I was not dreaming. This is a popular story that has been passed on in our school. A student had just finished training a sport that I forgot in the 9th floor of our sports center building. She rode the elevator alone and pressed the ground floor button. The elevator went down as expected, but it stopped at the 8th floor and opened. She checked the floor, but there was nobody there. It also opened at the 7th, the 6th, and eventually all succeeding floors. The doors opened. She checked after every floor, but each time nobody was there. The elevator opened again at the 2nd floor. Once again, she peeked outside, and it was still empty. Nobody could have pressed the button. She then pressed the close button again, but this time it won't close. Instead, flashing at the top of the floor number was a single word, and it said, overload. She got out of the elevator as fast as she could. Well, that's scary. I don't even think that's paranormal. I think that's probably just the elevator opening whenever it detects like an overload. Oh, elevators are scary. I have read some creepy stories about elevators. I was stuck in an elevator once. It was just like a mechanical issue. It was for about 30 minutes until the people came, got us out,